My parents banned me from Thanksgiving to spare my divorcing sister pain, claiming my engagement was insensitive. I complied, only to see photos of them laughing with her husband. They lied to exclude me, forgetting one detail. I own the house they were celebrating in. Before we continue today's story, we have an urgent announcement to make. Due to technical issues, we are pivoting towards another channel. Please subscribe to our new channel, Inherited Revenge. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. The betrayal didn't start with a scream or a fight. It started with the quiet, persistent buzzing of my phone on a Tuesday evening, vibrating against the mahogany surface of my coffee table. I was already in a vulnerable state, curled up under a thick, knitted blanket, nursing a mug of honey lemon tea that had long since gone cold. The seasonal flu had hit me hard that week, leaving my limbs feeling like lead and my head wrapped in a thick fog of congestion. I had taken a few days off from my job as a senior marketing director, a rare occurrence for me. Usually, I was the one powering through, the one who showed up early and stayed late, the one who fixed problems before anyone else even realized they existed. But that night, I was just Emma, tired, achy, and looking forward to the comfort of family. Thanksgiving was 2 days away. It was supposed to be a dual celebration. Not only was it our traditional gathering, but it was also going to be the first time the extended family would properly celebrate my engagement to Julian. Julian had proposed 3 weeks prior, a quiet, beautiful moment on a rainy pier that felt perfectly us. The ring on my finger still felt new, a heavy, sparkling promise of a future that finally belonged to me. I reached for the phone, squinting at the bright screen. It was my mother, Gabriella. "Hey, Mom," I rasped, my voice thick with sleep and sickness. "I was just about to call you to ask what time I should head over on Thursday. I'm bringing the wine and the artisan pies, right?" There was a pause on the other end. It wasn't the comfortable silence of a connection. It was a heavy, loaded silence. The kind that precedes bad news. "Emma, honey," Gabriella started, her voice dropping to that specific register she used when she was about to ask for a favor or deliver a blow she thought was for the best. "That's that's why I'm calling." I sat up straighter, ignoring the throb in my temples. "Is everything okay? Is Dad all right?" "Oh, Henry is fine, everyone is fine," she said quickly, too quickly. It's Maya." Maya, my older sister. The name alone caused a reflex of tension in my shoulders. Maya, who was 32 going on 16. Maya, whose life was a constant, chaotic whirlwind of high highs and catastrophic lows, all of which required immediate and total family intervention. "What happened?" I asked, though I was already mentally calculating how much money this was going to cost me. "She's devastated, Emma, absolutely devastated," Gabriella sighed, a dramatic exhale that crackled through the speaker. "She and her husband, things have finally imploded. He's leaving her. They're getting a divorce. She came over this morning in tears, barely able to speak." "Oh," I said, feeling a pang of genuine sympathy despite myself. Maya's marriage had always been volatile, but divorce was a heavy word. "I'm sorry to hear that. That's awful." "It is," Gabriella confirmed. "She's fragile right now. Like glass, we have to be very, very careful with her." "Of course," I said. "I won't bring it up. We can just have a quiet dinner, keep things light." "No, Emma," Gabriella cut me off. "You don't understand. It's not just about keeping it light. It's about you." I blinked, confused. "Me, what did I do?" "You didn't do anything, sweetheart," she said, her tone dripping with that patronizing sweetness that always made my teeth ache. "It's just your situation. You're glowing, you're successful, and most importantly, you're engaged. You have the ring, the fiancé, the whole happily ever after starting right now. Maya is watching her life fall apart while yours is coming together perfectly. It's too much contrast. It would be cruel to flaunt your happiness in her face right now." I went cold. "Flaunt? Mom, I'm just coming to dinner. I wasn't going to wear a neon sign." Your presence is the sign, Emma, she snapped, then softened. Look, your father and I discussed it. We think it's best if you don't come this year, just for this one Thanksgiving. Give Maya the space to grieve her marriage without having to look at your engagement ring across the table. It's a mercy, really. The room seemed to spin slightly. You're uninviting me, from Thanksgiving. We're asking you to step back, she corrected, as if the phrasing changed the reality. For your sister. You're the strong one, Emma. You always have been. You have Julian. You have your career. Maya has nothing right now. Can't you just give her this one day? I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that I was sick, that I needed my mom, that I wanted to celebrate my engagement with the people who were supposed to love me. But the years of conditioning, the decades of being the easy child, the fixer, kicked in. Fine, I whispered, my voice breaking. If that's what she needs. Oh, thank you, honey. I knew you'd understand, Gabriella said, her relief palpable. You're such a good sister. We'll make it up to you. Maybe Christmas. We love you. The line went dead. I sat there in the dim light of my living room, the silence pressing in on me. I looked down at my engagement ring, catching the reflection of the street lamp outside. It didn't look like a triumph anymore. It looked like a reason for exclusion. I felt a tear slide down my feverish cheek, hot and stinging. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. The next 48 hours were a blur of physical misery and emotional oscillation. I spent Thanksgiving Day in my pajamas, the fever finally breaking but leaving me weak and hollowed out. Julian, bless him, was furious. They can't do that, Emma, he had said, pacing our kitchen floor while basting a small chicken he'd bought so we could have our own makeshift dinner. It's ridiculous. Your family, you don't kick one kid out to coddle the other. It's toxic. It's not kicking me out, I had argued weakly from my nest of blankets on the sofa. It's triage. Maya is in crisis. I'm fine. They prioritize the emergency. That's how they are. Maya is always the emergency, Julian countered, pointing a spatula at me. Since I've known you, she's had a crisis about her job, her car, her neighbor's dog, and her hair color. At some point, it's not a crisis, Emma. It's a lifestyle. I knew he was right, but admitting it felt like severing a limb. I wanted to believe that my parents were just doing their best in a difficult situation. I wanted to believe that my sacrifice mattered, that by staying away, I was genuinely helping my sister heal from a traumatic divorce. I ate the meal Julian made. It was delicious, far better than my mother's dry turkey, but the food tasted like ash in my mouth. I imagined them at the family home, a somber, quiet table, Maya weeping into her mashed potatoes, my parents consoling her. I felt a pang of guilt for even being happy with Julian while she was suffering. 2 days later, on Saturday morning, I was feeling physically better. The fog had lifted enough for me to open my laptop and catch up on some emails. Habitually, I opened a new tab and clicked on social media. I didn't post much, but I liked to see what friends were up to. The algorithm, cruel and efficient, put the photos right at the top of my feed. They were posted by my cousin, who had evidently been invited to the small, private grieving dinner. The album was titled Best Thanksgiving Ever. Family is Everything Red. My heart hammered against my ribs as I clicked the first image. There was the dining room. My dining room, technically, though I never said that out loud. The table was set with the good china. And there, sitting at the head of the table, wasn't a weeping, devastated Maya. It was a radiant Maya. She was throwing her head back in laughter, a glass of champagne in her hand. She was wearing a new dress, one I recognized from a designer catalog I'd seen recently. And next to her, next to the woman who was supposedly so heartbroken over her divorce that my mere presence would shatter her. Her husband, Mark. He wasn't serving her papers. He wasn't absent. He was sitting right there, his arm draped casually over the back of her chair, grinning at something my father, Henry, was saying. I clicked to the next photo. Maya and Mark kissing under the porch light. Next photo. My mother, Gabriella, hugging Mark, caption, "Love my son-in-law, so grateful for family unity." Next photo, a group shot. My parents, Maya, Mark, my cousins, my aunt, everyone smiling, everyone happy. There was no divorce, there was no crisis. The room went silent, the air sucked out of it. I sat frozen, staring at the screen. The lie was so blatant, so careless. They hadn't even asked my cousin not to post. They didn't care if I saw, or maybe they just assumed I was so stupid, so blindly loyal that I wouldn't question it. They hadn't uninvited me because Maya was sad. They uninvited me because they simply didn't want me there. They wanted the party, the fun, the attention on Maya, without the competition of my engagement. They wanted to celebrate without the one person who made them feel inadequate by comparison. They lied, I whispered to the empty room. Julian walked in, holding 2 mugs of coffee. He saw my face and froze. "Emma, what's wrong?" I turned the laptop around to face him. He scanned the screen, his expression shifting from confusion to shock, and finally to a cold, hard anger. "She's not divorced," he said flatly. "No," I replied, my voice gaining strength. "She's not. They made you stay home alone, sick, on a holiday for a lie." "Yes." I looked back at the photo of them eating in that dining room. I looked at the walls of the house in the background. I looked at the expensive spread of food on the table. A cold calm washed over me. It was a sensation I hadn't felt before, the death of hope and the birth of strategy. "They look so comfortable," I murmured, zooming in on my father's relaxed posture. "They look so secure." "Emma," Julian said gently, putting the coffee down and coming to put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm so sorry. I'm going to call them and—" "No," I said, cutting him off. I stood up, closing the laptop with a snap. "You won't call them, and neither will I." "You're going to let this slide?" Julian asked, incredulous. "I'm not letting anything slide," I said, walking to the window and looking out at the gray skyline. "I'm going to let them think they got away with it. I'm going to let them think I'm the same doormat Emma who apologizes for taking up space." I turned back to him, and for the first time in days, I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "They had a great party," I said softly, "but they had forgotten one crucial thing." I tapped my temple. "I know when the lease is up." To understand why this betrayal cut so deep, you have to understand the history. You have to understand the sheer volume of myself I had poured into the empty void that was my family's approval. I was the younger sister, but I had always been the parent. Since I was 16, I was the one filling out forms, remembering appointments, and mediating fights. My parents, Gabriella and Henry, were charming people. They were the life of the party, excellent at social gatherings, but functionally incompetent at the business of life. They were terrible with money, allergic to accountability, and prone to magical thinking. Then there was Maya. Maya was the golden child. She was beautiful, charismatic, and completely helpless. She was the sun around which my parents orbited. If Maya had a cold, the house went into lockdown. If Maya failed a test, it was the teacher's fault. If Maya crashed her car, it was the road's fault. I, on the other hand, was the utility player. I was the one who got good grades so they didn't have to worry. I was the one who got a scholarship so they didn't have to pay. I was the one who built a career in marketing, climbing the corporate ladder with bloody fingernails, just so I could have stability. And what did I do with that stability? I shared it. 3 years ago, my parents' reckless spending finally caught up with them. They were facing foreclosure on the family home, the house I grew up in, the house in those Thanksgiving photos. They were going to lose everything. Maya, of course, couldn't help. She was finding herself in Europe at the time on a trip funded by maxed-out credit cards. So I stepped in. I didn't just lend them money. I bought the house. It was a complex arrangement. I bought the property to save it from the bank, clearing their debt. I allowed them to continue living there, legally as tenants, but I never treated them like tenants. I charged them a rent that was barely a fraction of the market rate, just enough to cover property taxes and insurance, and even then, they missed payments constantly. I covered the mortgage. I paid for the new roof last year. I paid for the HVAC repair when the AC died in July. I told myself it was my duty. I told myself I was keeping the family together. But standing there, looking at the mental image of Maya laughing in my dining room, I realized I hadn't been keeping the family together. I had been financing their delusion. I needed to know more before I acted. I needed to see the enemy up close. Later that afternoon, my phone pinged. It was Maya. Message, "Hey little sis, missed you so much on Thursday. Mom said you were super contagious, so we didn't want to risk it. Hope you're feeling better." The emoji at the end was the cherry on top. I took a deep breath and replied. Message, "Feeling much better, sad I missed it. How are you holding up? Mom said things were really hard with Mark." I watched the 3 dots of her typing bubble bounce for a long time. She was crafting the narrative. Message, "It's a roller coaster. We're trying to work through it. He came by for a bit just to keep up appearances for the relatives, but it's still really tense. Honestly, I'm just trying to survive right now. It's so hard seeing everyone else so happy when my life is falling apart." It was masterful. She admitted he was there to keep up appearances, to cover her tracks in case I saw photos, but she maintained the victim stance. Message, "I can imagine," I typed back. "Let me know if you need anything." Message, "Actually, since you asked, the divorce lawyer is going to need a retainer if we go through with this. And Mark froze our joint account. I don't want to ask Mom and Dad, they're already so stressed. Do you think you could spot me like $2K just until I get the settlement?" I stared at the phone. She was unbelievable. She was currently lying to me about a divorce that wasn't happening, to solicit money for a lawyer she didn't need, probably to fund a vacation or a new handbag she wanted. And the way she asked, so casual, so entitled, she didn't see me as a sister. She saw me as an ATM with a pulse. She looked at my career, my savings, my engagement, and she didn't feel pride. She felt hunger. She felt that because I had more, she was entitled to a slice. She was polished, she was pretty, and she was a parasite. "Julian," I called out, my voice steady. He poked his head in from the hallway. "Get the file box from the study," I said. "The one marked real estate documents." "What are you looking for?" he asked. "The lease agreement," I said, "and the clause about subletting and unauthorized occupants." "Why?" "Because," I said, typing a reply to Maya that simply said, "Let me check my finances and get back to you. I think it's time the landlord paid a visit." The file box smelled of dust and old paper, a stark contrast to the sterile, digital cruelty of the social media photos I had just seen. I sat cross-legged on the floor of my home office, the mid-afternoon sun cutting harsh lines across the scattered documents. Julian sat in the armchair behind me, silent, watching me work with a look of concern that was slowly hardening into resolve. I wasn't crying anymore. The tears had dried up somewhere between the second and third photo of Maya laughing with her ex-husband. In their place was a cold, vibrating energy, the adrenaline of a problem solver who had finally identified the root cause of the error. "Here it is," I said, my voice flat. I pulled out a thick sheaf of papers stapled at the corner. "Residential lease agreement." "You actually made them sign a lease?" Julian asked, leaning forward. "I had to," I explained, flipping through the pages. "The bank required it for the type of mortgage I took out to save the property. It was an investment property loan, technically. Mom and Dad signed it 3 years ago. They laughed when they did it. Dad made a joke about me being a slumlord. I told them it was just a formality." I ran my finger down the clauses. Clause 4, rent. Clause 9, use of premises. Clause 14, occupancy and guests. "They've been violating Clause 4 for 18 months, I muttered. "I haven't enforced the late fees or the missed payments because, well, because they're my parents. I just covered it." "And the occupancy?" Julian asked. "Guest stays limited to 14 days within a 6-month period without written consent of the landlord," I read aloud. "Mark has practically lived there on and off for years. If he's back, and judging by the photos, he never left, they are in breach. But a lease violation wasn't enough. I needed to understand the scope of the financial lie. If Maya was asking me for $2,000 for a divorce lawyer while partying with her husband, where else was the money going? I need to verify the timeline, I said, reaching for my laptop. Maya said Mark froze the accounts. She said she needs a retainer. You're not actually going to give her the money? Julian asked, his brow furrowing. No, I said, opening a spreadsheet. I'm going to bait the hook. I spent the next hour reconstructing their financial reality. Because I paid the mortgage directly, I didn't see their day-to-day spending. But I did have access to a joint emergency account I had set up for my parents, just in case. I had put $5,000 in there last year for house repairs. I logged in. Balance, $42.50. I scrolled through the transaction history. It wasn't repairs. It wasn't medical bills. Sephora, Nordstrom, Ticketmaster, a deposit for a tropical paradise travel agency. The dates coincided perfectly with Maya's mental health crises. When Maya was sad, my parents took her shopping. When Maya was bored, they sent her to a concert. They had drained the emergency fund, my money, to fund the lifestyle of the sister who was supposedly losing everything. They aren't broke, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. They're just broke for me. They have money for Maya. They have money for parties. But when the mortgage is due, they call me crying about their fixed income. My phone buzzed again, another text from Maya. Message, Hey Em, sorry to bug you again, just really stressed. Did you have a chance to check? The lawyer closes at 5. The audacity was breathtaking. Shiwa. Rushing me. She wanted the cash before the weekend was fully over, likely to pay for whatever celebration they were currently planning. She wants the money now, I told Julian. Tell her no, he said. I'll do better, I replied. I started typing. Message, I can help, but I can't transfer it. My bank has a hold on large transfers because of the fraud alert I set up last month. I have the cash in my safe at home, though. I can drop it off tomorrow morning. The reply was instantaneous. Message, OMG, thank you. You are a lifesaver. Tomorrow is perfect. Love you so much. Love you so much, I repeated, reading the text to the empty room. The words felt slimy. She loves the access. She loves the safety net. You're going over there? Julian asked. You know they're going to gaslight you. They'll hide Mark. They'll put on a show. I'm counting on it, I said, standing up and smoothing down my shirt. I want to see the performance. I want to look them in the eye when they lie to me. I need to know, Julian. I need to know if there is any part of them that feels guilty, or if I really am just a resource to be harvested. I'm coming with you, he stated. No, I shook my head. If you come, they'll be defensive. They'll make you the villain. This has to be me and them, daughter to parents, sister to sister. I need to give them one last chance to tell the truth. I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. I felt a strange calm settling over me. It was the calm of a soldier who has stopped hoping for peace and started preparing for war. And if they lie, Julian asked softly. Then I stop being the daughter, I said, turning back to him, and I start being the landlord. The drive to my parents' house, my house, was 20 minutes of nauseating nostalgia. I passed the park, where I learned to ride a bike, the high school where I graduated valedictorian, while my parents skipped the ceremony to bail Maya out of a shoplifting charge. Every corner held a memory of my own secondary status. I pulled into the driveway. It was a beautiful house, a sprawling 2-story colonial I had spent a fortune maintaining. And there, parked right in the center of the driveway, was a brand new white SUV. It still had the dealer plates. I stared at it. My father had told me last month he couldn't afford to fix the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom. He had cried on the phone about the cost of groceries, yet here sat a $60,000 vehicle. I grabbed my purse. I didn't have the $2,000. I had something much heavier, the truth. I unlocked the front door with my key. I didn't knock. I never knocked at my own house, a habit that usually annoyed them, but today it was a tactical choice. The sound of laughter drifted from the kitchen. It was that warm, raucous sound of a happy family, a sound that usually made my heart swell, but today made my stomach churn. And then he said, "Keep the ring." I heard Maya shriek with laughter. "Can you believe it?" "You deserve it, honey," my mother's voice cooed. "You deserve everything." I walked into the kitchen. The laughter died instantly. It was like someone had cut the power cord to a radio. Maya was sitting at the island, wearing a silk robe and sipping a mimosa. Mark, the ex-husband, was at the stove flipping pancakes. My parents, Gabriella and Henry, were at the table, surrounded by the remnants of a lavish brunch. Mark froze, spatula in midair. He looked at me, then at Maya, his eyes wide. "Emma," my mother gasped, standing up so quickly her chair scraped loudly against the tile. We weren't expecting you until later. You said morning, but I thought." "I said morning," I said, my voice eerily steady. I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I just stood there, clutching my purse, looking at the tableau of deception. "Hello, Mark, I thought you were moving out, or was it that you were leaving her?" Mark cleared his throat, looking down at the pancakes. Hey, Emma, we're working things out. For the kids, I mean for the family." "Working things out," I repeated. I looked at Maya. She wasn't crying. She wasn't devastated. She looked healthy, rested, and expensive. That was fast. Thursday you were suicidal. Saturday you're having pancakes. "It's complicated, Emma," Maya snapped, her defensive instincts kicking in immediately. "You wouldn't understand. Relationships are complex. We decided to try again. Is that a crime?" "No," I said, "but lying to me is." "We didn't lie," Gabriella interjected, rushing around the table to try and hug me. I took a step back, and the rejection hit her like a slap. She froze. "Emma, honey, we didn't want to confuse you. We didn't want to ruin your engagement happiness with our drama." "My engagement happiness?" I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "You banned me from Thanksgiving, Mom. You told me my happiness was toxic to her. You told me I had to stay away to protect her fragile state. And while I was sitting at home alone, sick, thinking I was doing the right thing, you were here, partying." I pulled my phone out and held up the photo from Facebook. "Nice dress, Maya," I said. "Is that new?" Maya rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, are you seriously stalking us online? That is so petty, Emma. Can't you just be happy that we're back together? Why do you always have to make everything about you?" "About me?" I felt the heat rising in my cheeks, the years of gaslighting finally igniting the fuel I'd been storing. "You asked me for $2,000 yesterday. You told me you needed a divorce lawyer. You told me Mark froze your accounts." "I did need it," Maya yelled. For counseling, for therapy, it's practically the same thing." "And the SUV in the driveway," I pointed toward the garage. "Whose is that?" "That's Mark's," my father, Henry, spoke up for the first time. He remained seated, looking at his coffee cup, unable to meet my eyes. "He got a new job. It's a signing bonus." "A signing bonus," I nodded. "So Mark has money, Maya has money for dresses, you have money for brunch." I walked over to the counter where Maya had left her purse. It was open. Inside, I saw the glint of a receipt. I pulled it out before anyone could stop me. "Hey, give that back," Maya shrieked, jumping off the stool. I held it out of reach. It was from the jewelry store, a receipt for a watch, $1,800, dated yesterday. "You bought a watch," I said, looking at her. "You asked me for $2,000 for a lawyer, and you bought a watch." "It was a reconciliation gift for Mark," Maya screamed, trying to grab the paper. "God, you are such a miser. You have a six-figure job, Emma. You have a rich fiancé. What is $2,000 to you? Why are you so obsessed with money?" "Because it's my money." I slammed the receipt onto the counter. "I pay the mortgage on this house, Maya. I pay for the roof over your head. I filled the emergency fund that you all drained to buy concert tickets and makeup." The room went deadly silent. My parents looked at each other. They didn't know I knew about the emergency fund. You checked the account, Gabriella whispered, her face paling. Yes, I said, I checked everything. Emma, that money was. We intended to pay it back, Henry stammered. We just had some expenses. Maya needed. Maya needed, Maya needed, Maya needed, I chanted, my voice trembling with rage. What about what I needed? I needed my family on Thanksgiving. I needed my parents to be proud of me, not hide me away like a dirty secret because my success makes Maya feel insecure. We are proud of you, Gabriella cried, tears finally springing to her eyes. But you're strong, Emma. You can handle things. Maya needs us more. She doesn't need you, I said, looking at my sister, who was glaring at me with pure hatred. She's 32 years old. She needs to grow up. And you're not helping her. You're feeding the monster. Don't you call your sister a monster? Henry stood up, his face red. You are being incredibly disrespectful. You come into our house, throwing accusations. Stop, I said. I held up a hand. Say that again. Whose house? Our house, Henry said firmly. This is our home. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had taught me to ride a bike, the man who I had idolized as a child. And I saw a stranger. A stranger who was comfortable living on my charity while spitting in my face. No, Dad, I said softly. It's not. The silence that followed my declaration was different. It wasn't the silence of shock. It was the silence of a power shift they refused to acknowledge. Don't be ridiculous, Gabriella said, wiping her eyes with a napkin. She adopted her soothing, motherly tone, the one she used to smooth over tantrums. We know the technicalities, Emma. We know your name is on the deed, but it's a family arrangement. We're family. We don't hold deeds over each other's heads. You held a wedding ring over mine, I countered. You held a divorce over mine. You hold everything over my head to keep me in line. But the moment I bring up reality, I'm holding it over you. You're being hysterical, Maya scoffed, returning to her mimosa. She clearly thought the danger had passed. To her, I was still just Emma, the one who complained but always paid the bill. Look, if you're not going to give me the money, just leave. You're ruining brunch. I'm not leaving, I said, and I'm not giving you the money. In fact, we need to talk about the money I've already given. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. I didn't just bring the lease. I brought the ledger. I did the math last night, I said, opening the folder on the kitchen island, right next to the plate of pancakes. Since I bought this house 3 years ago, I have paid $62,000 in mortgage payments. I have paid $12,000 in property taxes. I have paid $8,000, though. Use and repairs. I looked at my parents. In that same time, you have paid me a total of $4,000 in rent, and you have withdrawn $5,000 from the emergency fund. So, Maya said, picking at a fingernail, you can afford it, you're rich. I'm not rich, Maya, I snapped. I work 60 hours a week. I drive a 5-year-old car, I save, while you buy new SUVs and watches with money you don't have. That is enough, Henry slammed his hand on the table. I will not have you auditing us like some IRS agent. We raised you, we fed you, we paid for your college. I was on a full scholarship, Dad, I screamed back. You didn't pay a dime. I sent you money my junior year when the car broke down. The truth hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. They had rewritten history to suit their ego. In their version, they were the benevolent providers, and I was the ungrateful child. We love you, Emma, Gabriella pleaded, trying another angle. Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to hurt us? Just because of one Thanksgiving dinner? It's not just one dinner, I said, my voice dropping. It's the lie. It's the fact that you looked me in the eye and told me my happiness was a burden. And then I come here and find out that Maya's tragedy was a fabrication. I turned to Mark. And you're living here, aren't you? Mark looked at Henry, then at me. I mean, I stay over sometimes. Clause 14, I said. Unauthorized occupants. The lease states that any guest staying more than 14 days must be approved by the landlord. You've been here for months. You're citing a lease, Henry laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. To your parents, you're unbelievable, you have no heart. I have a heart, I said, tears finally pricking my eyes. That's the problem. I have a heart that keeps breaking every time I realize you don't love me. You love what I provide. That is not true, Gabriella sobbed. Then prove it, I said. I pointed to the door. Ask Mark to leave, right now. If this is about family and respecting me, ask the man who has been living here rent-free in violation of the lease to leave. Show me that you respect my boundaries. The room froze. It was the ultimate test. Choose the daughter who pays the bills or the daughter and her husband who drains them. My mother looked at Mark. She looked at Maya, whose face was twisted in a scowl. Then she looked at me. We can't do that, Emma, she whispered. He's family. And what am I? I asked. You're being unreasonable, she said, looking away. We can't kick him out on the street. He has a brand new SUV, I said. He can sleep in it. No, Henry said, firming his jaw. He stays. If you want to play landlord, fine, but you're a bad daughter. A cruel, vindictive daughter. Yeah, Maya sneered. Go back to your perfect life, Emma. Nobody wants you here. I looked at them. The three of them, united in their entitlement, united in their delusion. They truly believed I wouldn't do anything. They banked on my guilt. They banked on the fact that I had always been the one to fold. But they had forgotten that I was the one who fixed things. And sometimes, fixing a structure requires a demolition. I closed the folder. I zipped up my purse. Okay, I said. The anger was gone. I felt light, empty but light. You've made your choice. Where are you going? Gabriella asked, a hint of panic entering her voice as she sensed the shift in my demeanor. Emma, don't leave like this. Stay for a pancake. Let's talk about this calmly. I'm done talking, I said, walking toward the door, and I'm done paying. I stopped at the threshold and looked back at them one last time. I'm giving you 30 days, I said calmly. 30 days for what? Maya asked. To find a new place to live, I replied. I'm selling the house. You can't, Henry shouted, standing up. You can't sell our home. It's not your home, I said, opening the door. It's my asset, and it's currently a liability. I'm liquidating it. Emma, please. Gabriella ran toward me. You can't do this. Where will we go? Maya needs stability. We're too old to move. You have a signing bonus, I said, glancing at the SUV. And Maya has a new watch. You should probably return it. You're going to need the deposit. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door. I could hear the screaming start instantly from inside, Maya shrieking, my father shouting, my mother wailing. I walked to my car, my legs shaking, my heart pounding. But as I sat in the driver's seat and turned the key, I didn't cry. I took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. It was the first breath I had taken in years that didn't feel like it cost me something. I pulled out of the driveway, leaving the screams behind me. I had one more stop to make. The real estate agent's office was open on Saturdays. The fallout wasn't immediate silence, it was a cacophony. For the next 3 days, my phone didn't stop vibrating. It wasn't just my parents or Maya, it was the flying monkeys. The extended family members recruited to do the narcissist's bidding. My Aunt Linda, my cousins, even my grandmother, who could barely hear over the phone, left voicemails calling me heartless, ungrateful, and cold. The narrative Maya had spun was impressive in its creativity. According to the family grapevine, I wasn't selling the house because they had abused my finances and lied to me. No, I was selling the house because I was jealous of Maya's reconciliation and wanted to punish them for being happy. I let the voicemails pile up. I didn't respond to the texts. I was busy. I was meeting with a real estate agent, a bulldog of a woman named Karen who took one look at my lease agreement and said, "Honey, we'll have this listed by Friday." But I knew I couldn't just ghost the entire extended family. I had to clear my name. I had to nuke the lie from orbit. The opportunity came on Wednesday. Aunt Linda, the matriarch of the family and the keeper of the gossip, demanded a family mediation at her house. "If you have a shred of decency left, Emma," she had texted, You will come and look your father in the eye. I'll be there, I replied. I arrived at Aunt Linda's house at 7:00 p.m. It was a modest, well-kept bungalow that smelled of potpourri and judgment. When I walked into the living room, it felt like a tribunal. My parents, Henry and Gabriella, were sitting on the love seat, looking frail and tragic. Maya was curled up in the oversized armchair, clutching a tissue, her eyes red-rimmed, a performance worthy of an Academy Award. Mark was there too, standing protectively behind her, looking solemn. Aunt Linda and Uncle Mike sat across from them, arms crossed. "Sit down, Emma," Aunt Linda said, pointing to a hard wooden chair in the center of the room, the accused's chair. I remained standing. I was holding a thick, black binder. "I'm comfortable standing, thanks," I said, my voice steady. Julian was waiting in the car outside. I had told him this was something I had to do alone, but knowing he was 10 yards away gave me strength. "Emma," my father began, his voice trembling. "We just want to understand. Why are you doing this? Why are you throwing us out on the street? Is it really because we didn't invite you to Thanksgiving?" "It's not about Thanksgiving, Dad," I said. "Then what is it?" Aunt Linda snapped. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're having a tantrum. Your sister is going through a difficult time, trying to save her marriage, and you decide to sell their home? It's vindictive." "It's not their home," I corrected. "It's my house. And I'm selling it because I can no longer afford to subsidize people who lie to me and steal from me." "Steal?" Maya shot up, the tissue dropping. "How dare you? We never stole anything. You gave us that money." "Did I?" I opened the binder. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply walked over to the coffee table and laid the binder open. "Aunt Linda," I said, turning to her. "Last July, Mom called you crying, didn't she? She said the furnace had broken and they were freezing. She asked to borrow $3,000. Linda blinked, surprised. "Well, yes, that was a loan. They're paying me back." "They aren't," I said, "because the furnace didn't break. I replaced the HVAC system in June. I paid for it in full. Here is the invoice from the contractor." I slapped the paper onto the table. Linda looked at it, then at my parents. Henry shifted uncomfortably. "And here," I continued, flipping the page, "is a credit card statement from that same week in July. $3,000 charged to a luxury spa weekend in Napa for 3 guests." I looked at Maya. Was the massage relaxing, Maya? That's private," Maya shrieked. "It's not private when you use stolen money," I said, my voice rising. "Uncle Mike," I turned to him. "You co-signed a loan for Mark's business venture last year, right? $5,000. Mike nodded slowly, his eyes narrowing. "Yeah, he said he needed inventory." "Here is Mark's bank statement," I said, placing another document down. The day the loan hit, $5,000 was transferred to DraftKings and a lease payment for a BMW. Mark turned pale. "Where did you get that?" "You left your laptop logged in at the house," I said. "My house." I turned back to the room. "They haven't paid rent in 18 months. I have paid the mortgage, the taxes, the repairs. I set up an emergency fund for them, which they drained to buy concert tickets and designer clothes. And when I asked for 1 day of respect, Thanksgiving, they lied to me so they could party without feeling guilty about using me." "That's not true," Gabriella cried, but she sounded smaller now. "We just wanted everyone to be happy." "No, Mom," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "You wanted Maya to be happy. I was just tea." "He wallet." I pulled out the final piece of evidence, the picture of the SUV and the receipt for the watch. "Maya asked me for $2,000 for a divorce lawyer 2 days ago," I told the room. "She said she was destitute. She said Mark had left her. This is a receipt for an $1,800 watch she bought him yesterday." I looked at Aunt Linda. Does that look like a woman who needs your sympathy, or does that look like a con artist? The silence in the room was absolute. The air was heavy with the sudden, crushing weight of the truth. Aunt Linda picked up the receipt. She looked at the date. She looked at the amount. Then she looked at her sister, my mother. "Gabriella," Linda said, her voice dangerously quiet, You told me you couldn't afford insulin. We were tight that month, my mother stammered. But you bought a watch, Linda asked, her voice rising to a shout. You let me send you money from my retirement fund, and you bought a watch. It was for Mark, Gabriella wailed, to save the marriage. Get out, Uncle Mike said. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at my parents. Mike, please, Henry started. I said get out, Mike roared, standing up. You lied to us, you used us, and you treated your daughter like garbage. Maya tried one last Hail Mary. She threw herself onto the floor, sobbing loudly. You're all monsters. Emma manipulated the papers. She's lying, she hates me. But nobody moved to comfort her. The spell was broken. For 30 years, Maya's tears had been currency. Today, thanks to the cold, hard receipts in that binder, they were worthless inflation. I closed the binder. I didn't need to say anything else. I picked it up, turned around, and walked to the door. Emma, wait, my father called out, desperation in his voice. We can fix this. Don't sell the house. We'll pay rent, we promise. I stopped, my hand on the doorknob. I looked back at the family that had drained me dry. You can't afford the rent, Dad, I said softly. The market rate for integrity is way out of your budget. I walked out into the cool night air. Julian was waiting by the car. He saw my face, not tear-stained but fierce, and he just nodded. Done, he asked. Done, I said. The next 30 days were a blur of logistics and liberation. I didn't communicate with my parents directly. I hired a property manager to handle the eviction process. It cost me an extra month's fee, but the silence was worth every penny. The reports from the property manager were colorful. Apparently, the move-out was chaotic. There was screaming. There were threats. Maya apparently tried to pry a chandelier off the ceiling, claiming it was heirloom. I had bought it at Home Depot in 2024. But they left. On the 31st day, I walked through the empty house. It echoed with the sound of my footsteps. The walls were scuffed where they had dragged their furniture out. The carpet in the living room was stained with wine. It looked tired. It looked used. But for the first time since I bought it, it felt like mine. I didn't keep it. I couldn't. The ghosts of my childhood trauma were painted into the drywall. I sold it to a nice young couple who saw it as a starter home, not a prison. The market was hot. I made a profit, even after paying off the mortgage and the agent fees. The money from the sale didn't go into a family trust. It didn't go into a bailout fund. I used it to pay for my wedding. Our wedding was small. It was intimate. It was held in a garden blooming with late spring flowers. There were no designated seats for the parents of the bride. There was no golden child sister making a scene or wearing white to upstage me. Just me, Julian, and the people who actually loved us. Right before the ceremony, as I was adjusting my veil in the bridal suite, there was a knock on the door. It was Julian. He was holding an envelope. This was dropped off at the front gate, he said, his expression guarded. Security didn't let them in, obviously, but they asked me to give it to you. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my mother's script, looping and frantic. I took the envelope. I could feel the weight of it. Inside, I knew would be pages of guilt. There would be non-apologies. I'm sorry you feel that way. There would be excuses. And inevitably at the bottom, there would be a request. A small loan to help them with the deposit on their new apartment, which I had heard through the grapevine was a cramped 2-bedroom walk-up in a bad part of town. I looked at the envelope. I thought about the Thanksgiving I spent alone. I thought about the years I spent trying to buy their affection, thinking that if I just wrote a big enough check, they would finally see me. But they never saw me, they only saw the check. Do you want to read it? Julian asked gently. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had stood by me when I was sick, who had been angry for me when I couldn't be angry for myself, who loved me not for what I could provide, but for who I was. No, I said. I didn't tear it up. That would have been dramatic. I just handed it back to Julian. Put it in the trash, I said. We have a wedding to get to. The ceremony was perfect. When I walked down the aisle, I didn't feel the absence of my father walking me. I felt the presence of my own strength carrying me forward. I had walked through fire to get here. I had severed the anchor that had been dragging me down for decades. Later, during the reception, as the sun set and the string quartet played, I took a moment to step away and look at the gathering. I saw my friends laughing. I saw Julian's parents, who had welcomed me with open arms, dancing. I realized then that family isn't about blood. It isn't about obligation or history. Family is the people who show up for you when you're sick. It's the people who celebrate your wins without jealousy. It's the people who tell you the truth. I wasn't the daughter who was left behind on Thanksgiving anymore. I was Emma. I was a wife. I was free. And as I watched Julian raise a glass to me from across the garden, his smile wide and genuine, I knew the truth. They had said it would be too painful for my sister to see me happy. They were right. Because my happiness didn't depend on them anymore, and that was the greatest revenge of all.